The merger agreement sat unsigned on my desk, its 100 pages representing the last hope for my family's company. Davidson Industries needed this deal to survive, and they had no idea that their salvation required the signature of the daughter they'd cast aside as a burden. "Miss Morgan." My assistant's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Your sister's assistant called again. They're quite insistent about meeting with Novatech CEO." I smiled, thinking of Elizabeth's desperation. 4 months she'd been trying to arrange a meeting with Alexandra Morgan, the name I'd chosen when I left the Davidson family 5 years ago. My mother's maiden name had served me well. "Tell them I'm reviewing the proposal," I replied, looking at the stack of documents detailing Davidson Industries' decline. "I'll let them know my decision soon." Sarah nodded, then hesitated. "Also, your mother called. The family dinner is tonight. She says attendance is mandatory." "Ah yes, the monthly Davidson family dinner where my father ruled like a king, my sister played the perfect heir, and I had always been the disappointment. The burden. The one they wished would just disappear." "Tell her I'll be there," I said, straightening my simple black dress Valentino, though without the obvious branding my family preferred. It's time they met the CEO of Novatech. The Davidson family mansion sprawled across 2 acres in Greenwich, Connecticut, a monument to old money and older pride. As my driver pulled through the gates, I could see the usual parade of luxury cars, my sister's Mercedes, my father's Bentley, my mother's Range Rover. All leased now, though they pretended otherwise. Davidson Industries couldn't afford to buy them anymore. "Ms. Morgan," my driver said quietly, using my professional name. "Would you like me to wait?" "No need, Thomas. But be ready for some interesting calls later." The mansion's marble foyer echoed with familiar voices. My mother spotted me first, her perfect smile barely hiding her disapproval. "Alexandra. We weren't sure you'd come. Still at that tech company?" I accepted her air kiss, catching the scent of her expensive perfume, last year's version. I noticed. They really were struggling. "Still there, Mom." "Well," she sighed, adjusting her pearls, "at least you have a job. Though if you just joined the family business like your sister." "Mom," I cut her off gently, "we've been through this." Elizabeth appeared, champagne in hand, her designer dress probably paid for with borrowed money. "Little sister. Still a junior developer or whatever." I accepted the glass she offered. "Something like that. How's Davidson Industries?" Her smile tightened slightly. "Expanding. Going through some exciting changes." Exciting changes. A polite way of saying they were 3 months from bankruptcy unless the Novatech merger went through. "You know," she leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper, "if you'd stop being so stubborn, Dad might still give you a position. Junior vice president maybe. Better than coding in some basement." I sipped my champagne, thinking of my corner office 60 floors above Manhattan. "I'm happy where I am." "Happy isn't successful," my father's voice boomed behind me. "Though I suppose small tech companies have their place." I turned to face him. William Davidson III looked older than I remembered, his hair grayer, his shoulders slightly stooped under the weight of his failing company. "Hi, Dad." He nodded curtly. "You could have worn something more appropriate. This is a family dinner, not a coffee shop." I glanced down at my simple dress that cost more than his monthly lease payments. "This is more my style." "Yes," he sighed heavily. "That's always been the problem, hasn't it? You never understood what it means to be a Davidson." The living room filled with the usual crowd: board members, family friends, business associates. All here to maintain the illusion that Davidson Industries wasn't teetering on the edge of collapse. "William." A board member approached, crystal tumbler in hand. "Have you heard anything more about the Novatech merger? The street's buzzing about it." My father's smile tightened. "We're in final negotiations. Alexandra Morgan is considering our proposal." I hid my smile behind my glass. "What do you know about her?" "Young tech CEO," he waved dismissively. "Built some software company. Probably another startup that got lucky." The board member shook his head. "Novatech is hardly a startup, William. They're revolutionizing enterprise software. Worth billions now." "Built by some girl who probably got daddy's money," Elizabeth cut in. "Not like us. We built Davidson Industries through hard work." I thought about the nights I'd spent coding, the years of building Novatech from nothing, the empire I'd created while they weren't watching. Interesting theory. My mother called everyone to dinner. The dining room was as ostentatious as ever, crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, fine china. All mortgaged to keep up appearances. Before we begin, my father stood raising his glass. I want to address the rumors. Yes, Davidson Industries is exploring new opportunities. Yes, we're in talks with Novatech. But the Davidson legacy remains strong. I checked my phone. Tomorrow's press release was already drafted. Novatech considers acquisition of Davidson Industries. We're adapting to the digital age, Elizabeth added, her voice carrying across the table. These tech companies need our experience, our connections. I smiled into my wine glass. They had no idea that their entire future depended on the signature of the daughter they'd called a burden. Speaking of tech companies, my mother turned to me. How's your little job going? Still doing computer things? Something like that, I replied. Actually, I've been quite involved in some major acquisitions lately. Elizabeth laughed. What, fixing their websites? Come on, Alex. It's time to grow up. Come back to the family business before it's too late. Too late for what? To be part of something meaningful, my father interjected. Not just another cog in some tech company's machine. I stood up slowly, smoothing my dress. Actually, I should take a call. Business never sleeps. Now? My mother frowned. During family dinner? Trust me, I smiled. This is one call you'll want me to take. As I walked toward the door, I heard my father's voice, still dragging us down with her attitude. When will she learn? You can't succeed by running away from your responsibilities. I paused, turning back. Want to test that theory, Dad? The confusion on his face was just the beginning. The real show was about to start. I stood in the mansion's wood-paneled study, watching the seconds tick down on my phone. Right on schedule, the embargoed press release went live. Novatech CEO Alexander Morgan announces potential acquisition of Davidson Industries. Tech giant moves to acquire struggling family firm. Alexander Morgan's latest power play. Legacy company in crosshairs. Inside the dining room, I heard the first gasp. Someone's phone had buzzed with the alert. Breaking news. A board member's voice carried through the door. Novatech, the enterprise software giant, has announced plans to acquire Davidson Industries. CEO Alexander Morgan, known for transforming the tech industry. I walked back into the room just as Elizabeth choked on her wine. My father's face had gone pale, his hands gripping the edge of the table. On multiple phones around the room, my professional headshot appeared, the one used in Fortune's Most Powerful Women in Tech issue last month. Alexandra. My mother's voice trembled. What is this? I took my seat calmly, smoothing my dress. This? Just business. You know, those computer things I do. The room erupted in chaos. Board members who'd dismissed me moments ago suddenly couldn't look away. Family friends who'd pitted my small tech job were now hanging on every movement. You're Alexandra Morgan? The board member stammered. But that's impossible. Novatech is worth $8 billion, I finished for him. As of market close today. Mother's maiden name, by the way. Though none of you ever bothered to remember it. Elizabeth's face had drained of all color. All this time, while we thought you were just a junior developer? I smiled. Yes, that was rather the point. Though if you'd ever actually visited my office, you might have noticed it occupies the top 15 floors of Novatech Tower. My father found his voice. Why didn't you tell us? I met his gaze steadily. Would you have believed me? When have you ever seen me as anything but a burden to the family name? But, he glanced at his phone where headlines kept appearing, you're one of the most successful CEOs in tech. Yes, I agreed. And I did it without the Davidson name, without your connections, without your approval. Amazing what a burden can accomplish on her own. My mother's hand shook as she reached for her water glass. Darling, if we'd known. You'd have what? I asked quietly. Treated me differently? Respected me? Not spent the last 5 years calling me a disappointment. The room had gone completely silent. The carefully orchestrated family dinner had become something else entirely. The merger, Elizabeth said suddenly, her business instincts finally kicking in. All those meetings we've been trying to schedule have been sitting on my desk for weeks, I finished. Along with the due diligence reports showing exactly how badly you've mismanaged Davidson Industries. The board member leaned forward. Alexandra, I mean Miss Davidson, Perhaps we should discuss the terms. Morgan, I corrected him. Alexandra Morgan. And the terms are non-negotiable. Full acquisition, complete restructuring, new management team. Or you can watch Davidson Industries collapse under its mountain of debt. My father's face had aged a decade in minutes. You can't do this. I already am, I replied calmly. The board votes tomorrow. Though given your ownership structure, it really comes down to one thing: how much of your pride are you willing to swallow to save the company? The news alerts kept coming. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from journalists, investors, and suddenly interested relatives. I silenced it without looking. I don't understand, my mother said. All these years living in that small apartment, driving that modest car. Because I don't need to show off my success, I replied. I don't need everyone to know how much money I have or what I've built. That's the difference between us, isn't it? You measure success by what others see. I measure it by what I create. Elizabeth stood up abruptly. This is revenge. Sit down, I said firmly. For once in your life, listen to your little sister. The one you tried to offer a junior vice president position to 20 minutes ago. She sank back into her chair, face flushed with humiliation. Tomorrow, I continued, the markets will open and Novatech stock will rise again. Your phones will ring with calls from clients asking about your connection to me. People will want to know how the mighty Davidsons ended up needing their burden to save them. And what should we tell them? My father asked quietly. The truth, I smiled. That 5 years ago you told me I was dragging the family down. That you said I'd never amount to anything without the Davidson name. That while you were busy protecting your image, I was building an empire. I stood up, smoothing my dress. Now if you'll excuse me, I have an acquisition to finalize. Dinner was lovely as always. Wait, my mother called out. Please, we can work something out. As a family. I turned back one last time. We are working something out. For the first time in years you're actually seeing me. Isn't it interesting what $8 billion can do for a conversation? As I walked out, I heard Elizabeth mutter, Jesus Christ, my little sister is Alexandra Morgan. My driver was waiting outside, a knowing smile on his face. To the office, Ms. Morgan? Yes. I checked my phone, seeing 57 missed calls from family members. The real one. The next morning, I sat in my corner office at Novatech, watching the market's reaction to the acquisition news. Our stock was up 15% in the first hour of trading. My assistant buzzed in. Your father's here. And Elizabeth. And 3 board members from Davidson Industries. I smiled, straightening the nameplate on my desk. Alexandra Morgan. Tell them I'm in a meeting. They can make an appointment like everyone else. And your mother? She's called 15 times. Tell her I'm busy. Doing computer things. I turned to the window, looking out over the city I'd conquered while they weren't watching. My phone buzzed with a text from Elizabeth. Can we talk? Please? I had no idea. I typed back. Funny how the burden became the lifeline, isn't it? Sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about succeeding so spectacularly that when they finally realize the truth, they have no choice but to ask for your help. And as I sat there reading the flood of news coverage about tech visionary Alexandra Morgan, I couldn't help but think that sometimes the best revenge isn't just becoming successful. It's becoming so successful that those who called you a burden have to beg for your signature to survive.